right, Greg, we're back again, dude.
What's up?
How's it going? I see you got your hiking hat on, brother.
I do. I do. We're gonna see each other live in just a few
I,
hours.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I got this is like my REI, non-sponsored gear that I'm wearing.
I love it.
Yeah, Greg and I are going to go to Colorado. We're going to Estes Park. We're going to take another shot at a particular 14er that eluded us last time.
Why don't we
Mostly,
tell why don't we tell the audience of what? I mean, we probably have maybe 5 listeners at this point. So let's tell all 5 of them exactly
yeah.
what the story is. And then we should take bets on whether or not we accomplish what we think we're gonna do.
Sure. I'd love to tell. I'll tell us the part of the story, and you jump in where you feel. So, Greg and I, and then my brother-in-law Shane, started hiking. This was our 5th year, so 5 years ago we did a couple of easy, kind of fun hikes, and then we thought that we were something special, and we went to Estes Park, and we said, we had done Pikes Peak, so that's 14,000 feet. We'd like that one. We said, we'll just try this other one. It looks a little bit harder, more challenging. We'll try it. We get to this place that is 13,000 feet up, and that's where the hard part starts. It's called the Keyhole on Longs Peak. And I remember I was the last person to get up there, and I was tired. I was angry at the world.
I was angry. Well, we took a wrong turn.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. So
we took a wrong turn, and that made that hurt morale. Because it took us a while to figure out that we had taken a wrong turn. It's not like we took a wrong turn and they were like, "Oh, wait a minute, we're going the wrong way." Well, we hiked for an hour after that, and then an hour back.
And not to mention, we should also mention that the reason we turned around is there was a guardian angel sitting on a rock. This young 20-something guy just sitting on a rock, and he's got this hiking helmet, which none of us have.
No, he had all the gear.
Yeah, and he just goes, "Hey, you guys going to such and such?" And I don't even remember the path that he said. And I was like, "We're going to Longs Peak." He's like, "Yeah, but you taking this route?" And it's like, Keyhole. He's like, "Oh, no. This route's harder."
Yes. You are way off path.
Yeah. Right.
And then I'm certain he disappeared back into heaven.
Floated
away. Yeah, that was somebody's guardian angel. Like, oh God, gotta go down there and take care of Younger. He's about to do something stupid. So
so we get to the Keyhole, which is absolutely beautiful and stunning when you get there. And it's actually like a rock formation that looks like a key.
And to be fair, that is a good hike. It's like 13,000 plus feet. It's like 6-mile hike. It's a good hike just to get to that point.
Oh, for sure. And so I remember, and this is how I remember it. Shane, my brother-in-law, got to the top first, and I just remember him saying something like, "Whoa, this is interesting." And then and then Greg gets up there, and Greg just goes, "Nope."
Yeah, no more.
So there's quite a bit of exposure on that backside.
Yes. And I think we weren't ready for it mentally or physically, so we're going to go take another shot at it. Right. So, we're going to head up there. We shouldn't get lost this time. I think, I actually think we did, Torreys and Grays last year. And I actually think that's good. There's a little bit of exposure on those. They were pretty easy, but, just another couple of 14ers under our belt. So, we should be all right. It's going to be, it's that last mile or so is no joke, but hopefully we'll be ready mentally and physically to do it.
Yeah.
And if not, we'll turn around.
Right. That's okay to do. We got more food. We got more water. We got some music this time too. So
a little more experience. So we'll see. Good. We'll see. So what do you think? What's our odds? You think we get to the top?
I think that we will. I do. I think that, hopefully our listener, the one that we have, or for whatever, know Shane, if they don't know Shane already, he is somebody that I think that's good at motivation, right? So since we've already
Yeah.
been here,
Yeah.
I can perceive the moment where if any of us are up there and we're kind of wavering, but we feel good, him just going, "Come on, guys, come on,"
I
and
know.
that's probably all it takes for me to go, "All right, let's do this thing."
I know. Exactly. I'm following him up the whole way. That's the bottom line. So he's our fearless leader on
Really, for
Saturday.
sure.
So
Man. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm excited. It'd be fun.
yeah, it should. It should. It should. So what are we gonna chat about today?
So, you and I have been, we kind of want to start off with a little bit maybe of current events for us right now in sports. I think we're going to release these episodes a little bit later than these current events, but just kind of things that are going on right now that we've seen lately and how those can maybe tie into some youth sports, youth athletics. One of the big ones, I think that, Greg, you mentioned to me, you have a lot of soccer history. So just the Women's World Cup, right? That's going on right now. The U.S. is in it, right? And
Right.
they're doing pretty well. But you brought up the point that you feel like the gap between the U.S. women's team and the rest of the world has closed, right? And
Yeah.
and if you think about maybe the World Cup every 4 years, so you get this new crop of players every 4 years that are coming out of the youth sports in the United States. Do you think that youth sports, we've kind of talked about some of the problems that we're having. Maybe some of the problems in our youth sports maybe aren't as prevalent in some of these other countries, and that is maybe bringing us down, or do you think the rest of the world's catching up? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. So as we're taping this, the US just a couple of days ago tied Portugal. And so they got out of their group. So they're into the final 16, the knockout stages, but they got second in their group, which
Oh,
for the US, that's a huge deal. So the Netherlands won our group, US was second, so they've gone through. But I mean, the United States is the sort of undisputed number one team in the world. They've won the last two World Cups, so they're trying to three-peat on a World Cup,
holy
and
cow.
which is, yeah, I mean, that's unprecedented. So there's a lot of chatter within U.S. soccer circles about this women's team. There's all sorts of angles. The angle that I think is most prevalent to you and I is just, are other countries catching up to this United States dominance? And I think, my first thought process is yes, obviously. I mean, that's always going to happen. The leaders are always sort of taken over. I mean, there's, in finance, we have something called mean reversion, where essentially a stock market or a market of any kind, if it goes really high, it has to come down just to kind of revert back to the mean. And so so that can apply to the women's side here. I mean, you can't dominate forever. There's right
Nah,
there's
man.
even the UCL Bruins of the 1970s, at some point they stopped winning, right? So I think there's a little bit about that, but I also think that, the way that the US plays soccer and the way that we teach it in our youth game, we don't always put a lot of emphasis on the technical side of it. I mean, we put a lot of
Mm,
emphasis on like physicalness, big physical, kind of like a kick and run type of deal. It's literally like, I'm going to kick the ball in front of you and me. And because I'm bigger, faster, and stronger, I'm going to be able to go and get it before you. Right.
oh, kicking to the
And
fast kid.
yeah, right. And I mean, we in the United States, we have just these really big and physical and really freak athletes. And for a long time, I think that that's really been the way that the U.S. soccer on the women's side has dominated. They just come out, they score within the first 8-10 minutes, and then it's a whole new game, right? Now the other team is chasing, and we can just sit back
Yeah.
and just sort of dominate. And I think what's happened this year is that we're seeing more technical teams that are better defensively. They are better in possession. They're better just at the game of soccer. And it's causing our ladies a lot of frustrations. And so there's a lot of folks who think that, the way that we're teaching the game at the youth level it's just not the same. And we see it on the men's side as well. But the unique thing about sports in America is just the sheer size of our country. I think in Europe, whether it's, Germany or, Italy or France, right, just the geographics of the area is a lot smaller. And I really think that from a youth athletics perspective, that helps. It's easier for entities to manage geographically smaller areas. Where in the US, I mean,
Right.
gosh, our best soccer player might be, in Fargo, North Dakota, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, how do
Yeah.
how do you train? You almost need like, I don't know, it's really difficult, I think, to kind of scout and find and cultivate, and how do you get our best athletes to the places they need to be? If the closest academy or the closest, competitive team, and this goes for any sport in youth athletics, is 3.5 hours away,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
how does mom and dad get that athlete to practices, or to the games or to the teams? And so I think there's a geographic issue in the United States, but then I also think that there's just, I don't know, in the US everything is bigger, faster, stronger, and we sort of want our MTV and we want it now, and it's just like, right, we just go at it. So I don't know if the United States has the kind of patience to deal and create kind of like this more development minded mindset that I think other countries have.
Yeah. So I think we're maybe we talked about on this in a later episode, but that geographic disbursement then necessitates, or I should say, it creates this have and have not. So like if you're a family that doesn't necessarily have the income or the money to get your child somewhere, for a sporting event, then they just have to play locally, right? So, and I think a lot of these, the world countries, I would say, or not U.S. countries, probably have better public transit, and it's probably easier to get, from one side to the other. And so that probably creates some haves and have-nots. Like we were probably talking about the pay to play, right? That
Yeah.
probably also feeds into it.
Yeah.
A question I would have. So, do you think, and maybe this can be a hot take, do you think that in the next couple World Cups we will see the U.S. women's team? And I don't want to say fall, because I think the men's team has done a lot to progress in the last few
Yeah.
years. But do you think that so do you think that we're going to see the U.S. women's team kind of become this middle of the pack team like the U.S. men currently are, and we're going to see a lot of the women who are like the women's programs from around the world? Are we going to see them become the powerhouses like the Spains and the
Right.
Portugals of the
Yeah.
men's side? Or we're going to see this kind of like
I
in
do.
the women's World
Yeah.
Cup?
I do. I actually think our men's program's getting better. I think interestingly enough, there may be a real equilibrium where I feel like the United States, I do. I think that they'll end up, getting sort of, I don't think they're going to win this World Cup for sure. And if they play the way they're playing, they're going to go out in the next round, which would be really a big deal. But they're the underdog in this next round, which is crazy to think that,
Who are they playing?
they're going to play Sweden, and
Oh,
they're very good, and they've been playing very good, and the U.S. just has not played well at all. So if they go out in the round of 16, I mean that's not great, right?
right.
And I think on the men's side, I think on the men's side, there's been this feeling towards developing better players and having better technical players, better, just better footballers. And so I think that the United States on the men's side is actually ascending, and I think the ladies are going to descend. And I'm afraid that the women are going to have to go through a cycle or two of poor results before there's this recognition that things need to change. You know what I'm saying? Like if we go out in the round of 16, there's going to be blame on the coach, and there's going to be blame on, the players and their mentality. And I'm afraid that there's not going to be enough respect for how well the other countries have done.
Yeah.
But that's my sense on it. And there's an interesting perspective. I've got a coach that I knew that now he is from England. He's back in England, and we've chatted a little bit over the years. And what he shares, and I think he's so right, is that there's just almost this like understanding of soccer through osmosis, where these ladies on the women's side are able to sort of the soccer culture, the football culture is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so intense there that I think that really helps them understand and be able to elevate their game. There's this sense of what really good football looks like, and so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, and I think the other thing to watch on the women's side is just the professional league, and the professional leagues in Europe on the women's side are really ascending as well. And so can the NWSL sort of maintain at the same pace? But I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, it should be interesting to watch. And I hope we'll actually be together this weekend. They play it like Sunday at like 4 a.m. So we'll be on a mountain.
Sure.
We'll be on a mountainside. Probably not having access to that, but we'll get the details since they're playing in Australia at the moment. So it's
okay.
time wise is good. So what do you think about this US baseball 43-1 win? You and I, it's funny because I think you and I like both text each other almost at the same time. like I saw that or you saw that, but yeah. So in the second sort of headlines, if you will, of the week. This is from July 29th. US baseball sets record in 43-1 win versus New Zealand at a 2023. And here's the key point to me, by the way, in a U12 baseball World Cup. And there's just so many things. I have so many thoughts just on the title alone and just kind of backing out of that. But yeah, give me your first thoughts on a 43-1 win for the US over New Zealand.
Yeah, I think my first thought was just shock, right? I just could not believe I couldn't believe the scoreline, right? I'm sitting here going, well, first, I understand it's a World Baseball Classic or World Cup, and so it's a high level of competition. But these are kids, man, right? I mean, they're just kids. I mean, so again, my son plays, and I don't even at his level, which is or this past season was 13U, right? So a lot of boys are 13. They still have run rules, right? They have it with the mercy rule. You can't,
right?
If you're up by 15 after so many runs, they just call the game.
Yeah.
And that in of itself is kind of like demoralizing, but I feel like it's less demoralizing than getting beat by 42 runs.
Yeah.
And it's not like in basketball where you can kind of like score a flurry and like you can score 3 points and 2 points, right? Or in football where you can score 6 and 3. No. This is like 43 people hit that plate. You know what I mean? And so I kind of would, I mean, if I was coaching that team and I'm trying to put my coaching hat on, I think at some point, maybe, in the 15 to 20 range, I would have walked over to that New Zealand coach and said, hey man, like, what do you want to do here? Because, and I think and I don't know that the coach did or didn't, so I don't have any insight there. I just have the score line and, the U.S. news saying, oh my God, look how awesome we are. And I'm actually, to be honest with you, a little bit embarrassed by that, right? Like that, you can ask my son whenever he plays, if there was teams where they run rule, and he's like, Dad, it's not fun. It's not fun to be the team that's just smacking these other guys down, like kicking people when they're down. Like, it's not. What are you teaching in that?
I know.
Even you were kind of alluding to, kind of going back to the Women's World Cup. I feel, the women have been so dominant lately that they probably haven't learned to adapt like the rest of the world has. The rest of the world is under pressure, and so they're having to evolve to like rise to the level of the U.S. or whatever other teams are on top.
Right.
And I feel like in that particular game, like who's learning anything?
Like, right, exactly. And interestingly enough, just reading the article, they did mercy rule. So that was after 4 innings. They scored 20 in the third. I guess, yeah, I agree 100% on all of those things. I think if I would even take it a little bit deeper, I mean, first of all, it's U12. So, that means that these kids are 11 years old. Maybe some are 12, but essentially when they started their season, they were 11. Okay. What in the world are we doing having a World Cup for 11-year-olds? I mean, can we just do a full stop right there and just go, what are we doing? Like, U17 want to have a World Cup. Okay. All right. I hear you. I see you. Heard,
Yeah.
U19. Okay. Sure. I see you. U12. I mean, come on. That to me is, that just tells me that before we've done anything, we've already lost. We're already down the wrong path
Right.
before anything's happened. And then and how could you possibly know and field the top? What's the roster of a baseball team at U11, U12? I mean,
I would say probably 13's a lot. Like 13's a high number of
okay,
players.
so let's call it 12 kids. How you telling me you have the United States best 12 year olds?
Well,
No,
the
no way. No, no what so again, what is this? Who Troy Gloss's son plays on this team? So it's like so this isn't even our best 12 players. There's no way that we've created a system that has scouted and found the top 12 players. What we found is 12 connected dads and moms who have freak athletes as kids, and they're playing this game. And then the final thing that I cannot, the Twitter account of this whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, the first one is like, started our run off with a bang, hashtag for glory. They're 11. They're 11 years old. Are you kidding?
glory, man,
For
glory and
glory?
riches.
For glory. I mean, it's
It's embarrassing.
it's embarrassing, and it is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with youth athletics today. And
Yeah.
I
I can
just,
guarantee you that I can almost guarantee you that every player in that game, both New Zealand and the US, is they're going to grow it. They're going to grow. They're going to change, and they might not even play baseball anymore.
exactly, exactly, and just think about all that's kind of gone in to that, all the money that's being spent, and all the heartache and the time. And again, just to the maybe the kind of the point of our
I'm having some
show.
connectivity issues.
Okay.
Can you say I'm having some connectivity problems? Sorry, I can cut that out. You
Yeah.
want to say that part
Yeah.
again?
And just, I would say my final thought on this, and as it applies to our show, is that, there's a lot of parents out there who have 11-year-olds that are playing baseball, and they sort of are looking at this as like the coup de grace. Like, this is where I want my child to get to, or better yet, I'm failing as a dad, or I'm failing as a mom if I don't have my son on this trajectory. And I guess I'm here to tell you that that is BS, and that,
Mm.
you know, this isn't the real world. I mean, this is odd, and I don't think all that healthy for you as a parent or for your children. That would be my opinion. Because I think it's a ridiculous thing. And if we get to this idea of this 10-year thing, right, where the perspective of your athlete growing up from 8 to 18, if your child is going to World Cup games and winning 43-1 at age 11, I mean, what do you do for the next 8 years, 7 years, right?
They reached the mountaintop, right? It's like,
Exactly. I mean, seriously, exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I mean, I don't know, just a ridiculous thing altogether, in my opinion.
yeah. I totally agree, man. I think that I just, I guess my point, I just don't even see a point in there. Like, you want to compete against the rest of the world? Like, okay, I guess, sure. But again, they're 11 years old. Every one of them's going to change. Some of them probably won't even play baseball anymore. I don't, I don't know what you're trying to get out of that particular Carney.
Yep.
So
Yep. Agreed. And what I would assume is that those kids are being asked either explicitly or it's just like an unwritten rule that those kids are expected to play all year round.
oh yeah, probably. Yeah, that kind of leads into our actual our topic du jour, right? Our
That's
topic
right.
of the week. So that was the news portion of the episode.
We'll call it headlines. Our new feature in the Carney and Coach show.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, so Greg and I were kind of the other topic we kind of wanted to hit on was year round sports, and what we mean by that actually is do you and should you play the same sport all year round? Um, so I think in America, in youth sports in America, I mean, there's just using, and I know basketball and volleyball and all sports are like this. You have the fall season, you have the winter training, or maybe you're playing in the winter. You have the spring season, you have summer camps, and then you're right back into like your next season. And so this cycle of you're never getting a break, you're never taking time off. You're always just go, go, go all the time in that particular sport. And if you don't do that sport, you almost feel left behind, right? I mean, if your son or daughter, you know, say their main sport is basketball, and they want to go play a season of soccer, and then all of a sudden they're they didn't play with the rest of the team. Did they get left behind developmentally? Now they feel left out, or do you try to do them both at the same time, and then you're a parent going just ping ponging back and forth to practice, right? So I think that's the situation. That's a scenario that we're kind of identifying and talking about. And you alluded to it earlier. This is kind of our theme for the whole kind of season one, which is that 10-year journey, right? So if you look at it in a 10-year journey, Greg, like, is that necessary? Do we have to play year round? Like, what do we, as a parent, I'm thinking I want my kid to continue to develop. I don't want them to get left out. Maybe you can just give us a coaching perspective on, on making sure that kids are, if you're in a competitive sport, do you want the kid there year round for all those events? Like, what's your perspective there?
Yeah, and I love this topic. And this is a topic where I think there, the way that youth athletics in America is set up versus what's really best for the kids is definitely just divergent.
At odds, yeah.
And yeah, and I coached, competitive soccer, and our expectation were that kids would play, year round. You played club soccer, you were expected to play in a fall. We would have an indoor season of some sort, and then we would play again in the spring. You might get a month off in the summer, right? Because you'd have tryouts in June, and then we'd be back up in August, right? So maybe you get the month of July off. And look, from a coaching perspective and from a club competitive situation, that was what our expectation was that you were going to play, you were going to pay this fee and play this amount. I think in retrospect, while that's probably best for the club, it's best for the team. It's best for if you're trying to build a competitive team, that's best. But I don't think that that's probably best for the kids, especially as we think about that 10-year sort of thing, because it is a lot, and kids want to play all sorts of sports, and they should get exposed to a bunch of stuff. And there's just I just don't know if there's that benefit, both from a kid's perspective, but also at the parent perspective as well. I mean, you talked about sort of pinging, your kids and going all of these different places and doing all these different things. It's tough, but I'll also say that it's a very difficult thing because here in the United States, we don't have great rec programs, at least not in the cities and places that I have both coached and lived.
Do you mean Do you mean when you say don't have great programs, are you referring more to like the competitiveness within the program? Or are you saying like maybe elaborate on that for a second, like, just so that we can kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. Yeah. So I've long felt that there in the United States, there is a hole in our sort of youth athletics pyramid. There feels like we've got the competitive thing taken care of, right? I mean, we're winning
Yeah,
U11 games 43-1, over island
right.
countries, so good for us. So we've got that part down. And then I do think, look, the rec side of the world, every park and rec department in every major United States has a rec coordinator who's trying their best to throw out
Yeah,
some leagues. Every YMCA in the United States is doing something. But let's be honest, there's a chasm between those oftentimes, right? Where
yeah,
at the most competitive level, your expectation is to play year round, and it's to pay to play. Here's a chunk of money, and we're going to travel, and we're going to play, and we're going to develop, and competitive, and wins and losses, and playing time, and all that stuff. And then at the very bottom, you've got rec, which is just a couple of dads or moms coaching, trying to do their best to kind of field something. But let's be honest, it's not usually a great experience from a development perspective.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
there's not always a lot of learning going on. So, I think parents kind of get frustrated because, their kid is going out to play, but if it's just a little bit better than playground sports, there's not a lot of value for parents. I do think that for most parents, they feel like they get some value out of that competitive level because of all the training that they're getting, right? All the reps that they're getting, so they can
yeah,
see the progress of their children getting better. Whereas in rec in America, you could go play for 6 or 8 weeks in a rec, baseball, and come out no better than what you were before, right? So there feels like there's something in the middle there where there are coaches who are paid, who are adequate, who are development minded, and there's a little bit more growth expectation, more development expectations for the kids. But then there's not this need to play year round. There's not this, there's this idea that you can be on different things and play different things
yeah.
and play different sports. And because I
So to
think the
summarize,
year round stuff, I don't think is ultimately great for kids, and I think it leads to burnout.
so you would say, to summarize like your thoughts, you would see like some sort of developmental band in that pyramid, right? You have a rec,
Yes,
and then this like where you're learning and like developing your skills, and but like you said, there's not like a strong need to go 3,000 miles to play a tournament, right? So
exactly. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Almost like, or at the club level, they need to have some sort of like, I think you could do this in bigger cities, where you would have a team made up of like, this is their second sport. So this is the
yeah,
second sport, team. And so,
yeah,
for all the girls that play competitive soccer, this is a volleyball team that, they come together and they play. Now they're getting developed, that like it's still
yeah,
good, but this isn't their first, team.
yeah,
And a real important aspect is, I think, through that would be roster size, right? You would make your roster big, so that,
yeah.
you've got plenty of bodies to get to games and plays and practices and all that stuff. But maybe there's less expectation for kids and parents. And then, if that existed, I guarantee you that would be one of your child's favorite teams.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, I'm over here thinking. So I don't. My kids don't play hockey. Yours don't either. But Shane, who we alluded to earlier, one of our hiking pals, maybe we can get him on here. And our other hiking friend Jordan, their kids play hockey, and hockey actually is governed by an overall USA Hockey governing body, and they have a lot of these different like you don't have to like they have like a AAA, they have like a Central
Right.
States, and they have these in-house kind of bands where you get uh, you get evaluated independently, and then you get placed on a team, and then you play at your skill level, right? So I think that's more in line what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm never one for more government oversight or any sort of oversight in general, but I think maybe I don't know about how like soccer. I don't think you don't have to adhere to USA Soccer's kind of like, every soccer club doesn't have to register with USA Soccer. Every baseball club, it's like the Wild West in terms of baseball club. Any guy with like a field and a ball and a bat can start a team.
Right.
So I think that maybe there's something that we could learn from like that aspect, right? Because I think you're right. I think that this sort of year-round, pay to play kind of thing is not good for the kids. And what about that kid who is just a good athlete, right? Maybe he doesn't have the foot skills in soccer to like play on that competitive team, but it has the physicality, right? They need somewhere where they can go and run around with other kids that are just as physical, and they need to be able to build those skills and develop. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, man.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a lot of systematic issues around it. I mean, systematically, we have sort of parental cultural issues where parents have a very difficult time with FOMO. I mean, very difficult, very, very, very difficult, And I
Fear
know,
of missing out if you don't know what FOMO is.
yeah, and I mean, you chuckle, but like I'm dead serious that's one of the biggest issues with the youth athletics in America. And what I can tell you is from somebody on the coaching perspective and somebody who's like tried to build a club, like we know FOMO. We're playing off of that FOMO. We know that parents will darn near do anything that we ask them to do. We know it. So we can continue to ask, we can continue to travel, we can continue to do the things that we want to do because, parents just will do pretty much whatever is asked of them because
Interesting.
that's just how it works right now in the States. And so one of the first things that I think I'd love to see is more parents, more just more like, hey, we don't need to do all this, right? Like from a coaching perspective, we never got parent feedback. we said we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, right? And we never had like a group of parents come back to us and go, okay, we'll do 1 and 3, but we're not doing 2. Like that's never happened.
As a coach, what would you? Well, we don't have a parents union, right? So
we don't, we don't, but maybe there should be, right? Or maybe there should be at least a little bit more, sort of more organization or more value put on that. Again, I don't want to see any more government oversight than anybody else. I think about this in terms of capitalism. If you were a soccer club or a baseball club or a volleyball club, and you put yourself out there as a more parent friendly, club, you may find more parents attracted to your club,
yeah.
But the problem is that usually means that your teams aren't as competitive. And until parents can get away from wins and losses as the main judgment for how they look at any type of a club, we're never going to fix anything, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting perspective too, because I'm thinking through, my own just recent experience with, my oldest playing baseball. And for, in terms of wins and losses, his team, I would say it was an okay year, right? We won some, we lost a decent amount. But if I look at it from like my son's development perspective, he like shot up, right? He went from this, pretty good player to a really great player. And so, I mean, that he learned a lot this year on that team that didn't win. So I think that there's a lot of value that you can learn from a developmental focused team or organization or situation, and you can actually like have a whole lot of player development without actually winning a whole bunch of games, right? So those two things are not always connected.
No question, absolutely. But here's the fundamental issue, right? You know where I'm going to go with this, right? It went so well for you, parent Carney, what did y'all do? You guys are back, right? For another year of this development and a few wins and
So,
losses, right?
actually, and I honestly, I let him make that decision.
I know.
I'm kind. It's kind of a teaching. No, it's fair. It's a fair point. Um, and the only reason I did that is there was another aspect of his team that we can that actually feeds into this whole kind of thing that we're talking about around toxicity and just like team environment and team morale is so his team had some issues early on in the season with team morale. Somebody would
Sure.
strike out and they look at their parents like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And I don't know why this umpire is so bad. And then other kids, like like their parents are in the dugout and suddenly their parent is now wearing a team jersey and suddenly coaching the kids. And I'm like, wait a minute,
Right.
where did this guy? He's not a coach. Why is he yelling at all the boys? And so there was a couple other kind of environmental issues, and where it really stuck out for my son was we played one team at this tournament who just spanked our butt, but the team morale, like all the boys were supporting each other on the other team, and they were at on the fence like a legitimate baseball club. I mean, if you ever watched a college game, especially,
Yep.
so Greg is here from Nashville, and the Vandy boys are something special to watch. And
Yeah.
we've gone to see them, and again, they were all on the fence. They were all like, and this is at a young club. My son looked at me after the game. And he goes, "Dad, that's the kind of team I want to play for."
Yeah.
And so it wasn't. It is about wins. I mean, it is a more competitive team. It's the highest level competitive
Yeah.
team that you can play in baseball, and I'm letting him try. He
Yeah.
may have a lot of losses there, but there was other aspects to it that we did definitely consider other than just the wins and losses.
No, I know. And I
Don't
just
pigeonhole me, man. I'm not just I'm not one
I
dimensional.
I think it's but why I think it's great is that like this is what we're all dealing with. We're not. I'm not. I'm good at making observations at maybe what are some of the issues, but I'm the first to tell you that this is super complicated. It's very
Yeah,
hard. We're here because of a lot of different factors, and winning and losing is a part of sport. It is a part of sport. And to be fair, that is a sentiment that I have evolved where Coach Younger from 7 or 8 years ago was just like, why are we even caring about wins and losses? They are 8 years old. They're 9 years old. Who cares?
right.
But I've evolved that sentiment to the sense of saying, like, you know what, it does matter, because when you play the sport at the highest level, you win and you lose. Sports has a component of winning and losing, and so I've spent the last few years trying to reconcile that a little bit in my own mind, in the sense of how do we develop children? How do we coach kids? How do we make sure that they are still playing at 14? How do we make sure that we are not stressing out as parents? How do we make sure that we're not sending our children to therapy in their late 30s based on decisions I'm making when they're 11? Right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, what are we doing? But winning and losing has to be part of it. And so I'll be the first to say that it's not easy. I think just having some awareness around what we're doing is a good first step.
Yeah.
And your situation is a good representation of it's complicated, right?
Yeah. It is. It's
And
very complicated.
I think, just kind of back to our year-round sports, I think that if I had to do it all over again, I definitely think that I would, from a parent perspective, I think that I would try to do my best to communicate to coaches that my child, my player, may not be at everything, and that's okay. And I think that if
Yeah.
you have that upfront conversation with a coach, I think that that goes a long way towards setting the right expectations. And I think that what you'll find as a parent is that you've got to be open-minded to all of the things that your child can be involved in. I think that's a really positive thing, because when they get into high school, and they start to grow and they start to develop, the more seeds that you've planted in other things, even outside of sports, right? The better off they're going to be down the road. And if all you've done is just committed yourself 100% to hockey or volleyball or soccer or gymnastics, you're going to wake up one morning and your child's going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're going to look back and go, well, what the hell were we doing for the last 8 years?
Right. Yeah, I think my opinion is similar to yours. I would say that I would take a slightly different view on that as a parent. Um, and I look back on I look back on my oldest son's journey to here and just trying to figure out, because I have three little ones right behind him, trying to figure out what was successful, what was not. And I think that you're right, like planting that seed in multiple different spots, right? And in the context of youth sports, uh, we did everything, right? Like it was, and we didn't always go to everything, right? Like we didn't play year round. We played flag football, we played regular football, we played soccer, and Coach Craig coached him in basketball, right? And all of these different things helped him develop as a well-rounded individual. And this is kind of where I want to kind of go with like my real opinion on this is like as an athlete, right? Develop in the youth sports, develop athletes first at that young age, and then as they grow you can develop that skill, right? If you get a good coach who knows volleyball and knows soccer or whatever sport it is, if you have an athlete, they can adapt and they can adapt their skill to every single sport that they play. I'm kind of thinking, I think to a specific professional athlete, like in my head, that is a great example of this. I think it was Jimmy Graham, who played tight end for the Saints. Right, he was a basketball player in college. He played
Right.
basketball, and he was an athlete, and then he pretty much became a Hall of Fame, a Hall of Fame tight end. Right,
Right.
so develop athletes, and if you do that too, right, to your point earlier of if you commit yourself all in baseball, well, then that person, maybe they're really good at baseball or they're okay at baseball, but they're not an athlete. Then what do you do? But if you spend time developing an athlete, you also spend time developing good habits that you can then translate to other things, or around like consistency and like and nutrition and taking care of your body and all of these other things that can translate down the road, to a longevity in life and
Right.
being fit and being healthy. So I think that
I
I think
agree. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think what you also have to recognize as a parent is that, whatever sport your child is playing at 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12, most likely won't be the sport that they're playing at 14, 15, 16, and 17,
right.
and if you knew that now, how would that change the way that you're parenting?
Yeah, I would just be like, hey, let's go play some sports. Let's go run around. Let's go
Yeah.
get fit.
What if
Let's
what if I told you that Elliot at 17 is going to be playing golf?
probably go buy some clubs. Well, I mean,
Just think
I
about
think,
like how you might, if I could just interject real quickly.
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just think about how that might de-stress your entire outlook of what's going to happen this year, right? That well, what's interesting here is that he's not actually going to play baseball in high school. He's actually going to find another sport that he loves. And how would that change the way that you think about it? Because for a lot, not to say that that's what's going to happen, but I wonder if parents thought a little bit more about that, they might have less FOMO. They might have less stress. They may not
Intensity.
bring that intensity, and then they may not bring that intensity into their relationship with their child, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
they may like, I'm not going to take this that serious, because it turns out that my child's not going to actually play this sport long term.
Yeah. I think actually, I've done a lot of work on my relationship with my kids around sports, because I was, I've had an evolution as well of going from that dad who's like, you weren't trying very hard and yelling like right after the games to, trying to take a step back and have a more kind of cerebral conversation and ask probing questions to the kid, not in an angry way, right? It's
Right.
like, well, how do you think you did? Oh, I think that I did good. Okay, well, and so I think that's actually helped deepen my relationship around sports, and it's with my kids, and it's nurtured it. And so now we have a much more positive relationship around sports, which I think, if my goal, it's not really about me, but if I had a goal to for my kids to play sports, I want them to have longevity in that. And so in order to do that, they need to have positive reinforcement, positive attention in that specific realm, and then they're going to want to do it, right? It creates that kind of dopamine cycle where
Yeah.
I do good in sports and dad and I have a good conversation, a good relationship, or even I just play sports and dad and I have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's probably more the goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you want to know my long-term goal, it's to be able to sit down and watch sports with my kids later in life, whenever they're older, and just talk about it and have fun with it. And maybe if they have kids, like it's something that we can bond over, and
Right.
we can have a relationship about.
Yeah. 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 No, that's I think for most parents, that's exactly what we want, right?
Yeah, I think so, man. We're at about 40-45 minutes. What do you think, man?
Yeah, well, I actually have some packing still to do for this trip. So yeah, I'm good. If you got any other topics, this has been an awesome discussion.
Yeah,
As all of these have been, to be fair.
yeah. I think I really like the. I think keep doing the kind of the headlines as you put it. I think that even though they're current events, I think that we can there's lessons that we can learn through
Yeah.
them, and you can kind of come back to it. So we got a couple other topics. I think one of the ones we've talked about, maybe we'll change it. I don't know. We'll talk about pay to play maybe
Yep.
next time.
Yep.
If we make it back from Long Peak, we can talk about that.
That's right. That's right.
That sounds great.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah, let's
great,
do it.
great, man.
And I will see you in person in a few hours.